All right, welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into the terrifying and honestly utterly fascinating events that unfolded in the source material for The Door in the Dark. We're looking at a scenario where the end of the world wasn't just, a final curtain call. Instead, it was actually the opening of a profound and incredibly dangerous dialogue with the universe.
So, let's start with this hook because it just gives me chills every time. The outside got quiet. This comes from a young girl named Ellie. I mean, picture it. The adult scientists are frantically tapping their instruments, assuring everyone that everything is perfectly fine, but every kid in the room suddenly feels the air get heavy. It was this single, completely unscientific observation from a child that tipped us off. Our apocalypse wasn't a closed chapter. It was an ongoing conversation. To really understand this, we have to ground our story at Safe Zone Alpha. This was an emergency military airfield in Virginia, right on what survivors called the morning after the end. Look at this. Beneath this bruised auroral sky, you've got traumatized people led by Colonel David Chen, trying with this quiet, heartbreaking discipline to pretend that morning still means what it used to. They are painstakingly throwing together a fragile piece out of scavenged shielding and canvas, just desperate to hold on to any shred of normalcy. But of course, that fragile piece shatters. And it doesn't happen with an explosion or a blaring siren. No, it happens when children across the globe, completely independent of one another, start drawing the exact same terrifying image. In the dirt, on scraps of paper, on old cardboard, everywhere. Now, what's so unsettling here is the visceral consistency. We're talking about a tall, uneven rectangle, and the center is shaded so aggressively that the paper is literally tearing. And the creepiest part? A vertical smear, like a shadow, just standing in the doorway. These weren't just arts and crafts, guys. These kids were acting like biological sensors. They were picking up on something massive that happened right alongside a subjective drop in atmospheric pressure. And this sets up this wild, terrifying split screen between human intuition and scientific measurement. On one side, you have the child's experience. Dogs whining, dark doors, this overwhelming feeling of the outside listening. On the other side, you have the adults scrambling to decode the scientific reality. Quantum coherence pulses and planetary lattice phase shifts. Basically, massive invisible ripples in Earth's magnetic field. It was this brutal collision of innocence and existential horror. The thing is, the children were the true instruments way before our tech caught up. To bridge that gap, it took Dr. Sarah Chen and a highly advanced system known as quiet glass. Think of quiet glass as a super-powered quantum computer built specifically to measure the fine structure coherence in Earth's magnetic lattice. It was finally sensitive enough to pick up the phase shifts that conventional instruments completely missed. It proved once and for all that the kids weren't just imagining the dread. So, using quiet glass, the science team reconstructs the recent global magnetic stabilization event, and they find something horrifying. Actually, wait, it wasn't just a stabilization event. It had sent a structured carrier pulse, these nested geometric harmonics, expanding outward into deep space. Without even realizing it, humanity had just rung the cosmic doorbell. The realization hits the scientific team like a ton of bricks. The first noise had already gone out. There's no undo button here. No way to unsend the message. The pulse is expanding at the speed of light into the dark. And whatever might be out there in the vastness of space, well, it now has the time to hear it. And right on cue, astronomers notice something they dub the occlusion. It's a cold, clinical term for a waking nightmare. It was an irregular, shifting, deep space anomaly. Basically, it acted like a massive shadow, blocking background star emissions. Something immense was sitting out there between us and the stars. And the implication? Yeah, it was watching us. With global dread skyrocketing, a faction leader named Kamal al-Rashid steps onto the world stage. He taps directly into that public panic and frames a global policy around it, coining this chilling catchphrase, "Do not call into the forest." It's the classic dark forest theory. In an unknown, predator-filled universe, making noise is a literal death sentence. Kamal formalizes this into what he calls the stillness framework. And on the surface, it sounds like pretty common sense risk management for a terrified public, right? A temporary halt on active lattice replies, creating low-emission civil zones, independent audits of all quantum research, and, crucially, classifying any unauthorized signals as a species-level threat. For his supporters, this was absolutely vital for human survival.
Critics, though, were quick to point out the fine print. Silence requires enforcement. If one rogue radio broadcast or quantum experiment could doom the entire planet, then whoever controls the silence holds absolute power. There was a real fear that Kamal was positioning himself as the authoritarian steward of humanity's voice, using the occlusion to grab control. But Kamal had brilliant PR. The core of his doctrine was pushed with the simple, emotionally heavy phrase, "Silence is care." His camp argued that suppressing scientific research and clamping down on communication was actually the ultimate moral duty to protect vulnerable people from cosmic exposure. It made surrendering freedom feel like an act of profound empathy. Meanwhile, back in the safe zones, the kids' behavior flips again. They completely stop drawing doors. Just overnight, gone. Instead, they start scratching out these long vertical strokes and horizontal marks, all arranged in highly structured intervals. When the scientists run this against the quiet glass data, their blood runs cold. The drawings look exactly like a countdown. One of the kids summed it up perfectly. The quiet has to finish being quiet. They instinctively knew the grace period was over. Whatever was lurking behind the occlusion was getting ready to test us. The harmonic window was about to open, and humanity was going on trial to see if we could actually keep our mouths shut. Okay, this timeline maps out the climax, and it is a nail-biter. At 0610, Earth's magnetic lattice locks into common timing. By 0621, the harmonic window fully opens, and the world goes dead quiet. But then, at 0642, Kamal al-Rashid hypocritically forces an unauthorized structured signal through, claiming he needs to establish a boundary. And by 0653, the field stabilizes, and astronomers watch in horror as the occlusion out in deep space physically shifts its geometry. The scientific team, especially Dr. Winters, realized this window wasn't just a radio frequency. It was a moment of mutual legibility. It's like suddenly our souls were laid bare to the cosmos, our psychological state, our internal conflicts, our true intentions. They were completely readable. By choosing to act or even trying to force boundaries, we became known. But here's the wild part. Despite Kamal's rogue noise, the children sensed that the universe didn't just hear the loudest guy in the room. Ellie said it best. It heard the quiet part. The universe felt the collective, disciplined, terrified stillness of millions of survivors who were just holding their breath in the dark. So, I want to leave you with this. If the universe truly is a dark forest, teeming with unknown observers, what happens now that we've made ourselves completely legible? Now that the occlusion is fragmenting and watching us from multiple angles, what exactly did our first impression invite in? It is a deeply unsettling question. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and remember to always question what's waiting in the dark.